John Lee Real Estate, find you the best rates. All throughout Philly like Schuylkill Expressway. Talking to people who out of the tour.
Hello, everyone. This is John Lee, your local real estate agent in the Philadelphia, greater Philadelphia area. I am here with Alex Chung with Tri-County Insurance. We're going to just kind of dive right on in. Alex, if you can share a little bit more information about yourself, what you do.
Hey, yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, John. So I've been in the insurance industry for about 12 years now. Actually, starting tomorrow is exactly 12 years.
Oh, snap.
So,
Okay.
yeah. June 1st, 2011 is when I started. So yeah, went to school for underwriting. Originally wanted to be a mechanic, actually, and realized I didn't want to do oil changes for the rest of my life. And thought it'd be different than everybody else going into finance or becoming a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So went into risk and realized I also didn't want to sit behind a desk and do other people's paperwork for the rest of my life. So I ended up going to the sales side and never turned back, actually. So
So was that actually one of your first careers, if like your only career, or did you have anything else besides, like, I mean, you'd mentioned oil changes, so I mean, you're doing mechanics, but
I guess like throughout high school and middle school, I thought I was going to go into like mechanical engineering
yeah.
and stuff like that. But every job I've ever had was in sales, actually. So I did, your restaurant jobs, but also worked at like a wholesale cell phone company, sold suits and tuxedos.
Oh, damn.
So
Okay.
yeah, so I've figured, I've done a lot of sales and I like the sales side and kind of doing the client facing role. So when I was going to school, you get to kind of see what underwriting and stuff like that is like. And I didn't like the idea of just seeing no sunlight and just being inside an office behind a desk for,
Mhm.
40, 50 hours a week. So kind of changed it a little bit, went towards the client facing sales side and thought it'd be a little bit more fun. But yeah, I think I made the right decision overall.
I think so too, man. I know that there were a couple of clients that I referred to you. They have nothing but to say like the nicest thing about you and your business. Just for our audience, I know insurance is a very broad field. Specifically, what kind of insurance do you specialize?
Yeah, so I specialize in property and casualty. It's usually split into two different sectors, life and health or property and casualty. I'm more specializing in physical, tangible assets.
Hmm.
So like your home, your vehicle, your business, your liability and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit more fun than worrying about people's lives and morbidity and mortality rates and stuff.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
And as far as your personal journey, like, can you explain a little bit more about your childhood all the way to the present?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up Montgomery County, went to North Penn High School. Kind of I played sports, I played football and stuff, so most of my friends weren't really Korean or Asian in the Asian community. But once I got out of high school, I realized I wasn't going to go pro in football. I wasn't big enough or wasn't fast enough or wasn't athletic enough.
Right,
And that's when it kind of shifted for me, or it's like, hey, what's my identity? It's not,
right.
you know, into this or that. And that's when I started getting a little bit more heavily involved in the Korean community and try to help out a little bit more as best as I can. And I really didn't know what to do or where to go. So just in my job field, I started giving out better advice instead of trying to make money or anything like that. It was more my father. He's a very modest man, very humble. So his saying to me in life was, "It's better than nothing." So it's as long as you're honest and nice to the people around you, the business will come to you. And I started just giving real honest advice, no beating around the bush, and kind of giving it straightforward. And
Right.
so it kind of worked out for me in my career as well.
Hmm.
So it was a fun journey, I guess. I guess for work wise and stuff, I've always had a job since I was 14.
Right.
I think there was maybe like a 2 month gap in between my life since 14 till now, and I'm almost 35, where I didn't have a job, and it was because I was trying to figure out how to afford school and all that stuff and switching careers. But yeah, because of my father just being modest and humble and working hard, I've always had a job, always,
Hmm.
took care of myself, I guess, in a sense, try to stay independent and found my community and amongst other Koreans and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's crazy. Like, even for me, man, like same as you, man. I have over a decade of sales experience. You get tempted in so many different ways to make a quick buck, right?
Yeah.
So that's the hardest struggles that we face. And in that same regard, with you admiring your dad, I actually admire my uncle quite often. You know
Mhm.
my uncle.
Yeah,
He's been a
it's
car
awesome, dude.
dealer. Yeah, he's been a car dealer for like for as God long. I mean, 40 years. Like I
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
for
even do
longest I've been
30.
alive.
Yeah. I think once the first generation of Koreans immigrated to Philly, he was
Mm.
probably one of the first to like be in the business of cars.
Yeah, yeah. If you own a Lexus, you definitely 100% got it from him.
Yeah. So yeah, so there's a lot of and again I grew up with him by the way. Like
Mm.
the first 3 years of my life, I grew up with my uncle and my aunt. So there were a lot of characteristics that I took from him and I still that still impacts me today. So I can definitely relate with you. The next question I was gonna get to was how did our paths cross? I don't know if you
We-
remember. I actually
Yeah,
can't remember, but I wanted you to tell our audience what you
yeah, absolutely.
what your
We have
story.
an awesome friend named Sunny.
Yeah.
So she's actually an ex-coworker of my wife Angela. They used to work at Brown Brother Harriman together.
Okay.
Um, I think she was like her higher up actually. And then when they switched jobs or companies, my wife actually ended up following her to the new company. They also worked there, but when my wife switched to a different another company, they separated, but they still, stayed friends, still stay in touch. But Sonny kind of reached out to me, thought of me, and said, "Hey, I have a buddy that might be a great connection for you." I think we chatted on Zoom or something like that for a while, which was supposed to be like a 10-15 minute call, ended up being like an hour because we
Yeah.
really got into
Yeah.
it.
Dude, it was
But
awesome because not only that, like I started connecting a lot of the dots because there were some people in the community that you knew in the Korean community that we share as far as like friends or you know how it is.
it's a small world,
Yeah,
small
it,
community.
it, it becomes smaller and smaller as we kind of get to know like who you know, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it just shows you the power of networking because I didn't even know Sunny that well at the time. She was just
Mm.
gracious enough to say, "Hey, I know you're." This was in the beginning of the year when I was actually starting real estate like full time, and I was
Okay.
just like talking to, and I still do, but I was. It's a story. So I was talking to like everyone and anyone, and Sunny was nice enough to say, "Hey, you should talk to Alex." So I was like, "Oh man, another insurance agent," you know. So it was just one of those things. I was like, "All right, I'll give it a shot." So after having a conversation with you, obviously knowing that you're very genuine, not just that, like I realized like I give a lot of referrals to especially people in your field because I'm a real estate agent, right? And I try to be fair. Like even my own brother, like he is in State Farm, right? Like I give people like choice. I say, hey, here's Alex. Here's another friend of mine, John Lee. His name's also John from Geico, and here's my brother. Like contact one of these guys and see where it goes. And not only has your service always been like really good, but typically you're outpricing a lot of these guys. So
With
it kind
different
of works
markets.
out.
And I've actually had the pleasure of speaking to your brother and John, and they're awesome people too, and they do great work
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
they're like again, I only try to surround myself with people who are very positive in nature. And I thought that that was a very great characteristic that you had. So thank you one for just being a good person, but also two like expressing all of that here on the podcast. So
Thank you.
I know you mentioned to me that your dad obviously had a significant impact on your life. Was there any other mentors or professional mentors that you had that you could think of?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I've actually had a journey of trying to find a mentor in the first few years of the business. But you tend to realize that most of the mentors that you thought were mentors are really trying to just take your business. Because it's a dog eat dog world. It's a sales
Right,
business.
right,
And after a while, I kind of looked at my partner in the business because I didn't really want to go to him as a mentor because he's my boss and like not my boss, but more of like kind of just handling my paychecks and kind of deal. So I didn't want to go to him at first, but we sat down and he's now 72, but
oh geez, okay,
at the time, he was much younger when I got into the business. He was about
yeah,
60.
yeah,
Um, he sat me down, we had lunch, and he was like, "Hey, how come you never come to me for advice and business and stuff like that?" And in my head, I was thinking, I don't know, but honestly, it was mostly because I wanted to have unbiased opinions, not what you would say is the way it's supposed to be, because you're kind of controlling my book of business. But it's soon realized he was there for my, my benefits. So after my first 2 years, I stopped looking for mentors and went straight to my boss, and he started giving me great advice in life and business and how to approach certain aspects of, certain problems. And 12 years later, he asked me to become a partner. So I guess he's been a great mentor to me, and he thought of me as a great prospect in his business as well. So
Yeah, because I feel like when you get a certain point in your life, or at least in your age, it doesn't even have to be like old or whatever. In your case, your mentor is like, 70s, but
yeah,
there is a sense of like you've already accomplished everything you accomplished in your career, right?
mm,
And then there's also a sense of like people wanting to give back, right?
yeah, yeah,
And there's genuinely good people that are like that in this world, and it makes me look at it in a very positive way. So that's a great story. How did you meet? Like, did you guys just? It's because of like you got into the business and he was just not managing, but maybe like he was like overseeing your book, and then that's how you developed the relationship.
yeah. So I technically didn't. When I first got into the business, I wasn't fluent in Korean, and
Right.
I kind of wanted to approach certain businesses to ensure that I really enjoyed. So I liked cars. I wanted to go to mechanics, body shops, and car dealers and such. So I went to more of an American agency versus another Korean agency to piggyback off of.
Hmm.
But it's a hard business to try to get into if
Right.
you have no experience, no book of business, no major insurance company is going to want to make a contract with you.
Right.
So I went to Tri-County, which is run by Thomas Lombardi, an Italian family, the close-knit family. Went to them and, kind of asked if I could start off my career here. And accepted me with open arms, kind of showed me the ropes. Like I said, the first 2 years, I kind of just did my own lone wolf type of deal, try to handle everything on my own. And I was pulling my hair out, but after the first 2 years, I gave in. I was like, hey, I need some help. And like I said, I was kind of worried because I wanted unbiased opinions, not just what he thought was correct. But, after almost 10 years, I realized everything he gave me, all the advice he gave me was exactly what I needed to hear. And, so
So yeah, I mean, let's go on the topic of that. I know most of your business comes from homeowners insurance, right, or some form of insurance, right? Give a brief for our audience. Give a brief description of the types of products that you guys sell, that you
yeah,
sell, and some of the things that you offer.
yeah, sure. So I do home and auto, which is, the cookie cutter type of policies that everybody's going to need if you own a home or a vehicle or even an apartment. And I also do commercial, which is a very broad statement, but anywhere from like just liquor liability, the general liability, or covering your business personal property, your workers' comp. And that really varies on the type of business you have. Or so like a mechanic's not going to need the same type of policy a dry cleaner's going to have,
Right.
or if you're creating websites, or so it's a little bit different per business, but that's what makes the commercial side fun. It's very different versus here's a home or here's an auto, and it's the same exact coverage.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's so I guess more is for your audience. I guess it's more important about the homeowner side, I guess, right? That's what they would want to know more about.
Yeah, so like kind of going on that topic, yeah, for our audience, because most of the audience are homeowners, right?
Yeah.
If they're shopping for insurance, right,
Mhm.
what are certain things that they should consider in an insurance policy? So one of the things that I want to mention to our audience is you are a broker, right? So that means that you have multiple carriers, right?
Yeah.
Some agencies, like for example, my brother who does State Farm, he strictly only has State Farm products.
Mhm.
Someone like John, he does Geico, he strictly does Geico products. In your case, because you're a broker, you have multiple agencies. Now, I know from my understanding, I don't think you have access to State Farm or Geico because they're specifically,
Other captive
yeah,
companies.
they're
Yeah, I don't
captive,
have
right?
that.
So if you can explain the difference between captive agencies and uncaptive agencies, and then also kind of where you might provide value, and in some cases where some captive agents might be able to provide value, and the differences between the two.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As an independent broker, not captive, I work with about 25 different companies. Some of them are just commercial, some of them are just, home and auto, some of them are both. But it gives me a good range of options for different types of risk. The good thing is I do have a lot of options. If something were to happen with a company A, I can, shop around at company B, C, D, E, F. Being captive, its greatest benefit, in my opinion, is you don't have to go to 20 different companies to find the right option. You have it all in one book. So you don't have to memorize how the billing works for all 25 different companies or what all 25 different companies want. Because
Right.
one company might want a married couple, another company might want married couple with children, and so on and so forth. But which makes it a little bit harder. It's a lot more work, I guess, just to get the initial quote coming out. But yeah, even for John, your buddy, he works with Geico, which is an amazing company as well. But on the homeowner side, he also has an array of options since I don't think Geico offers homeowners directly.
Hmm.
But it's you can consider him kind of like captive with Geico, but more so on just the homeowner side.
Hmm.
But he'll have a few more options on just on the auto side, but he'll have some extra options for the homeowners. But as far as your brother, which is State Farm, it's just captive for both home and auto.
Okay.
But that'll be the only option moving forward for them.
Right.
But I guess each individual company has their wants and needs. But if you're captive with one company, their acceptability for their risk is a lot broader than being a broker and having all these different companies.
Right.
So for example, like let's say General Electric, everybody knows GE.
Right.
They used to have like 1 million employees, so they had an in-house insurance agency
Right.
to cover all their employees. But when they started to do really bad and downsize almost 90% of their workforce, they realized the insurance company was still profitable, so they broke off and created their own entity. And I've been working with them for over the whole 12 years now. But they're a great company. Not many people have heard of them, but it's hard to join them if you don't have like absolutely perfect credit.
Right.
So
Right.
so it's really kind of for me, I have to really know who the customer is to know where to place them.
Right.
But for State Farm, it's really flexible where I'm not 100% sure actually because I've never actually worked with them. But since it's one company, I'm sure it's a lot more flexible to accept a broader range of clients.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder because I came from the Medicare industry, also the insurance field, and they have captive agents and then they have uncaptive agents. So I was an uncaptive agent, meaning I was able to broker out to multiple insurance carriers,
Yeah.
but I can still sell the captive agent's product. So like
Okay.
if there was a Keystone Blue Cross or Cigna Health Spring or Humana, like these are very big branded, insurance carriers. They have captive agents for those carriers, but like uncaptive agents could sell them too, and that's what I did. So I'm just curious, like why are like some agencies like a Geico or State Farm not entirely receptive to like brokers like yourself?
Yeah, so that's I guess that would be more. I'm not gonna get too into detail, but that's more of like the back end details too. Kind
Yeah.
of I think the biggest thing is also support. Like I have 25 different companies, so I have to talk to 25 different underwriters about
Right.
25 different things. But when you're working with just Geico, you have that one guy that you can go to for everything, which makes life a lot simpler too.
Sure, sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing. Because prior to getting into property and casualty, I did life insurance. And I was captive with AIG at first, before I went independent. And the support was phenomenal. I call one number, I can say my problem, and they'll, take care
Yeah,
of everything immediately.
yeah,
As soon as I went, independent and started brokering out, and I still work with AIG today, and along with a couple other different companies, but I try to email them for the independent agency line, and it's like I have to go through 12 different people to figure out
uh,
an answer. That's
yeah, no.
that's the biggest thing.
I guess that makes sense. I think it was just easier for me because, like, I guess it depends on where you are as far as production. Because
Yeah,
at a certain level, like, when you're 10 years in the business, I can imagine maybe you might have a pretty good connection with some of these. I mean, obviously, you might not be using all 25, but I'm pretty sure you might be using at least a good five of them, right? They
yeah,
they
yeah.
probably know you on a first name basis, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Absolutely. And that makes a huge difference of, getting something passed through, or, if there's an issue, most people are, hesitant to let it go. But if you have a relationship with them and say, hey, can you let this one slide?
Mm.
This guy made a payment 2 weeks late, but I know it's can you help me out?
Right.
And that usually that's where it makes the biggest difference. So
Now, to stay on the topic of homeowners insurance, just for our listeners, are there any specific types of coverages or things that might be overlooked on a policy, or things that might be added that might or that shouldn't have been added in a policy that are typically in a common insurance policy?
yeah. Yeah, so most bigger name carriers, they'll bloat the policy with a bunch of stuff that's automatically added on there, like lock replacement, fire extinguisher replacement, all that stuff. Generally you can't remove those, but like the main parts of a homeowner's policy on your declaration page, you'll see the A, B, C, D, E. A being the dwelling coverage, which is the cost to replace your whole property if you had a total loss. So B would be your other structures, any property that's not connected to the property. So if you have a fence, a shed, a mailbox, any of that's damaged, it'll go under coverage B. Your C is your personal property. If you flipped your home upside down, anything that's not attached to your home will be considered your personal property.
Mhm.
So if you install the $20,000 chandelier and you're worried that your personal property is not covered enough, that goes on your homeowners, your actual dwelling. So since it's attached. And then you go to your liability. So if somebody trips and falls on your property because you didn't clear food you'll be fully covered for that under your liability coverages. And then you have your medical pay, which is a much lower limit than your liability limits. That's if somebody were to get injured, they didn't sue you, but they just want to get paid out for your medical bills. It gets covered under there. And then you have your, deductible. And those are like the base underlying coverages that's on every homeowner's policy. The major things I would recommend is to make sure you have replacement cost on your property. There's two different types, replacement cost or actual cash value. If you have actual cash value and your home is, 70 years old and nothing has been updated, they're going to pay out on your damages minus depreciation. So having replacement cost is very important, both on the dwelling for your home itself, along with your personal property. So if you had actual cash value and you had water damage and it hit your TV hanging on your wall, you paid, like $4,000 for this TV in 2010 and you kept it for this long, and you had this crazy 70-inch TV, which is awesome. But, they come back and say, hey, this TV is 10 years old. We're going to give you, about $700 for this.
Right.
And that's going to be nowhere close enough to replace that TV in today's standards. So, if you had replacement costs, they'll pay you out to replace that exact same TV. But if it's not available, to get something similar in today's standard,
Right.
Which is also very important. Also, like I think almost 80% of my claims, outside of weather related damages, is like the power went out, or and then the sump pump over flooded my basement, or like my kid's friend came over, flushed a tennis ball 50 times and flooded the bathroom, or whatever it is. None of that is actually covered without backup sewer and drains or water pump coverage. And on average, having somebody come out to just mitigate the water damage and drying it out and making sure there's no mold is going to be, depending on the size, anywhere from like, 5,000 and up. So having at least a minimum of 5,000 on there is going to be pretty important.
Right. Right.
And any personal property damage from water as well would be only covered on that coverage. So that's important. I know you're well aware of the sewer line coverage too.
Yeah.
So like water pipe, outside pipes not inside your home. So anything outside of your home going to the main water line by your sidewalk or something.
Yeah.
Those pipes are generally guaranteed up to 100 years, but anything goes after 50.
Yeah.
If your home's older than 40, 50 years, I would try to get that coverage on there, which is pretty important.
Yeah, and for our listeners, you have to be aware of what the regulations and rules are based on the county, because well, first you have to know the age of the home, right? So in Philadelphia, historically, a lot of the homes are built in 1900s, or sometimes they're even built in the 1800s. The sewage lines are mostly coming from cast iron or terracotta, right? As you mentioned, they last about 100 years. Well, guess what? If your home was built in 1900, it's due to go out. So You're going to find quite often that in Philadelphia they have insurance, separate insurance for you to purchase if for whatever reason your sewer line goes out or things like that. And from my experience, it can range anything between 2,500 to $5,000, give or take,
Yeah.
sometimes even more. And this is based on small houses that I own, which is like 1,300 square feet. So I can imagine if it's like a bigger home with a big backyard.
Yeah, yeah.
So just make sure for our audience that you guys keep aware of that, because
Mhm.
those kinds of costs probably typical or common.
And if, like, especially if you're living in the city, you'll see a lot of construction being done or water line,
Mhm.
repairs being done.
Mhm.
What you have to realize is they're fixing their water lines, not the water lines from their lines connecting to your home.
Right.
So if there's like a tree near your water lines or anything like that, and the root outgrows it into your water lines, or sediment starts to build up in
Right.
there, or get a heavy truck that's parked on top of it, which can also damage it. So there's a lot of factors, but the older it gets, the more
For
susceptible
sure.
it is to damage. So
And
something.
I know that in the city of Philadelphia, they require for the actual drain lines themselves, the sewer lines, to replace with cast iron. If you're in the suburbs, you don't have to have cast iron. You can actually use PVC. So I know that there's some plumbers that are licensed or they have high familiarity with, let's just say, the suburbs, and they think that they can replace the sewage line with PVC, but in reality, you can't. So like just
Yeah.
so many like rules and regulations that you guys should just keep in mind of. I don't even know how we got into talking about plumbing, but uh, but more or less, it's important that you really like anything with water damage. That's typically, in my opinion, where I come across a lot of questions asked. With repairs, whether it's rain, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of, let's go on that topic. So like, how do you define a claim if it was raining and there's a roof leak? Like, can you even make a claim? Can you make a subject to a claim, or is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely.
How's that?
So if there's, let's say so the biggest issue with roofs are, that's the only part of an insurance policy, unless you have full replacement on it and you pay additional for that, that they'll always take depreciation off on it. And that only goes up to a certain point. So if, like, I think roofers generally say your roof is good for up to 30 years.
Right.
Insurance companies only accept it up to 20 actually. So if it's beyond 20 years old, they'll even sometimes ask you to get it certified by a roofer saying that this has another 10 years worth of life left. But sometimes you'll see a home with like mold growing on it with moss, on top of the roof. It's discoloration, it's
Mhm.
green,
Mhm.
and you get water damage. And you're like, oh, I need to get this covered. You need to replace my roof. The insurance company is 9 times out of 10 is going to come back and say, hey, that's a maintenance issue. We'll cover the water damage inside the house, but we're not going to touch your roof.
Right.
You should have replaced that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I think that's where a lot of the bad stigma comes from with insurance companies. Like, oh yeah, it's a crap insurance company. They didn't cover my roof. It's the same thing as saying, hey, you need to replace my car. My car broke down and exploded on fire, but the insurance company comes out and says, "Oh, you didn't get an oil change for over 40,000 miles. This is absolutely going to happen. It's a maintenance issue."
Right.
So but if let's say there was a hurricane and strong winds blew off a couple of shingles and water got through and damaged your roof, all that's going to be covered. But the biggest misconception is if you don't maintain your roof and it's super old and it looks like it's deteriorating and then you had damage, then most of the time it's not going to be covered.
Right.
But yeah, it's important to kind of keep your eye out on the roof, especially if you live in the city and you have a flat roof home. Those don't last 30 years.
Right.
So it can last 30 years as long as you maintain it.
Right.
I think the recommended time frame is to get it resealed every 5 years and then resurfaced every 10. But if you have a good roofer and they're resurfacing it really well and maintaining it really well and cleaning it up every five, maybe 6, 7 years, then those flat roof homes can, last up to 30 years. It's just
Right.
nobody touches them for, 20 and then you get a leak. And it's like, oh, what happened? It's like, okay, you didn't touch your roof for almost 20 years, but you should have maintained every five. And I think that's something a lot of people don't really realize. Maintenance is a huge thing,
Sure.
so
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think level of expectation needs to be met, on both sides,
Mhm.
including the people who are making the claims as well. So that part I understand. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for, just interview purposes, I thought this was great. We're gonna wrap things up kind of here. But for our listeners, where can our listeners find you, Alex, and how can they contact you if they want to get insurance?
Yeah. Even if you don't want insurance, you just want, some unbiased opinions or advice or, anything like that. Can I shout out my email or my phone number?
Yeah. Everything, links, descriptions, all that's gonna be in below. But yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, my office number is 215-782-8080. Or my email, it's achung, so ACHUNG 731 @gmail. Feel free to just shoot me an email. You can stay anonymous if you don't want to tell me who you are. You can shoot me give me a call.
Yeah.
You don't have to switch to me. I'm more than happy to give you more advice on whatever situation you're having. If you have a claim and somebody denied it or whatever it is, I can kind of further explain into detail why it was denied or maybe some options of, what you can provide to go around it. Like for example, I have a buddy, he has sewer line coverage, but his home was built in like 2006 and he was away on vacation and his neighbor gave him a call and said, "Hey, you have a flood on your front lawn. There's water that's spurting out of your grass."
Oh, geez.
Not sure what's going on, and he just bought that home like a few months prior to that.
Yeah.
And he was wondering why like his water pressure was so weak the whole time when taking showers and stuff. The insurance company came out, looked at it and denied it, saying that, hey, it was earth movement, like an earthquake or shifting. We're not going to cover this. So, I kind of went back, looked at the photos when the property was first built, and they didn't have these trees right next to the water line. So I was like, those trees had to have been installed, and there's no way they're carrying it from the street onto that property. So there had to have been some heavy machinery or truck on there kind of, excavating the property and stuff like that. And went back, showed them parts of the piping that was dented and said, hey, this looks like it wasn't an earthquake because it would have been the whole thing. It looks like it was dented down from, heavy weight that was pressured, but, that put pressure down on the ground.
Right.
Came back and paid him out the whole like $11,000 on it.
Wow. Okay.
So it's always good to have a second opinion instead of just believing that it's going to be denied. But most of the time it could be just denied due to the contract wording and stuff. But hey, who knows? I can always take a look at that for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so feel free. I'm not, I kind of like talking about insurance. I know most people think it's a dry topic, but I'd rather you be well informed than kind of go into it blind. So
no, that's what's up. Well, Alex, man, thanks a lot, and definitely we'll be hearing from me, and hopefully hearing from some people from our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, bro. Take care.
Thanks. You too.
All right, bye.
John Lee Real Estate, find you the best rate. All throughout Philly like Schuylkill Expressway. Talking to people who out of the 215, even the 267, who always helping like, oh, no time for no student.